Yes. And like I said, these are the things that were all concocted in Babylon. These special rules and regulations, these traditions of the elders about carrying mats on the Sabbath day, or the Arab of courts, the Arab of weights and measures, the Arabs of boundaries, what would later embody the Talmud, a binding of heavy burdens on the people that was never intended to be part of their responsibilities towards Yah to begin with. So anyway, it says here that, doing your own pleasure, speaking your own words, the issue of ceremonial uncleanness, okay, is not having anything to do with the people. It has to do with the priest, or whether the priests were interacting with certain individuals who were bringing offerings, and on the Sabbath day, this was a fundamental non-event. So, now, let us go and again, if you're going to use the defilement issue, then, you have females in modern day Israelite assemblies that, are not in a separate area even, while they are on their fertility cycle. For some bizarre reason, they stay away for pregnancy, but for menstrual cycles or whatever, they come into the tabernacle. And I'm not going to argue that point, because, they didn't have feminine hygiene products back in the days of Moses. They were looking for water to drink, not to water to mikvah in. To become ceremonially unclean, or just plain unclean by any reason, would constitute one having to leave outside the camp and to wander out into the desert to try to find a spring to bathe in. And frankly, their chiefest complaints were at times, and at least on a couple of occasions, was that they didn't have any water to drink. So they didn't have automobiles back then, and lots of other things. So we have to allow for some application and some modernization in that respect. I don't know. Maybe they did not use any type of attempt to try to block the flow or something, and that's why they were set apart. I don't know. But today we live in modern times, so modern adaptations need to be made. But if you're going to follow that line of reasoning, then you must at least set aside or put aside the sisters who may or may not be on their fertility cycle. People who have poison ivy or poison oak, people that have some type of issues, boils and things like that, should never be allowed to come into the tabernacle using that same reasoning. You should never be allowed to come into the public assembly on the Sabbath day. Okay? So, at any rate, so that addresses the issue of uncleanness. So the charge of ceremonial uncleanness or some type of personal defilement as a result of having relationships with your wives in this day and age is utterly ridiculous in my estimation. The last thing that I will speak to is to the seventh day of creation, the sixth day, seventh day of creation. Adam and Ewa was created in the afternoon hours of the sixth day. And as they entered into the seventh day, the last instruction that Yah gives them was to go forth, be fruitful, and multiply, which would involve some form of intimacy, I am sure of that. So if that is the earliest example of how one should conduct themselves on the Sabbath day, for Jubilees to hurdle over the first chapter or second chapter or third chapter of the book of Genesis, and to hurdle over the book of Exodus, the book of Deuteronomy, and to hop, skip, and jump past even a reasonable rendering of the 58th chapter of Isaiah, and then form its own special law outside of any Torah or prophetic utterance is, in my estimation, an error, and therefore that is why I believe, even though there are good things in the book of Jubilees, that the Book of Jubilees as a whole does in fact remain in the realm of Sephiri Chitzanim, or outside writings, and it's there for a good reason. Okay? So anyway, if there's anything I said that's upsetting to you, next time bring a life jacket. If you have any comments, you're more than welcome to leave them below. Have a good night.